Commander Vex of the Galactic Hegemony surveyed the blinking tactical display with satisfaction. Their armada's first engagement with the primitives of Sol 3, or Earth as the inhabitants called it, had been a resounding success. Or so he thought. "Status report," Vex demanded, his four eyes blinking in sequence as he studied the aftermath of their initial skirmish at the edge of the Sol system. Lieutenant Meek approached with a datapad. "Commander, we've neutralized the human flotilla that attempted to intercept us at the Neptune defense perimeter. 7 of their vessels destroyed, 3 disabled. Casualties? Minimal, sir. We lost 2 scout ships and sustained moderate damage. To 1 cruiser." Vex nodded, his scaled skin gleaming under the command center's harsh lighting. The species had only achieved interplanetary travel within their own system a mere century ago. Their primitive projectile weapons and rudimentary energy shields were no match for hegemony technology honed across 1,000 worlds. "Prepare a message to Central Command," Vex ordered. "Inform them that the humans pose negligible resistance. We'll proceed with planetary subjugation as scheduled." "Sir," interrupted Senior Analyst Dren, her voice uncharacteristically hesitant, "there's something unusual about the engagement data." "Explain." Dren projected a holographic display showing the destroyed Earth vessels. "These ships don't match what our intelligence suggested were their primary defense vessels. They're smaller, lightly armed. And the communications we intercepted. The terminology is consistent with reconnaissance protocols, not primary defense forces." Vex dismissed her concerns with a wave of his upper limb. "Their main fleet likely remains in defensive positions around their homeworld. These were merely their outer system patrols." "That's what concerns me, Commander," Dren persisted. "Our deep space monitoring detected no emergency signals sent toward Earth. It's as if they weren't trying to warn their homeworld." Commander Vex paused, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his features. "Your assessment? I believe we may have encountered a scout unit, sir, not their military vanguard." The command center fell silent. Scout unit? The resistance they'd encountered had destroyed 2 of their ships and damaged a cruiser. If these were merely scouts, the tactical officer suddenly straightened. "Commander, multiple gravitational anomalies detected behind Jupiter's orbit." "Show me," Vex demanded. The main display shifted to show dozens, no hundreds, of spatial distortions forming in a precise geometric pattern. One by one, massive vessels began materializing through what appeared to be artificial wormholes, each ship dwarfing the small patrol craft they'd encountered earlier. "Sir," whispered Mick, "those ships are at least 3 times larger than our heavy cruisers." The communications array suddenly lit up, indicating an incoming transmission on all frequencies. Vex nodded reluctantly to the communications officer. A stern human face appeared on screen, wearing what appeared to be a formal military uniform, adorned with colorful insignia. The human's expression remained impassive as it spoke. "Attention. Invading forces. This is Admiral Thorne of the United Earth Defense Fleet. You have engaged and destroyed members of our civilian border patrol. Stand down immediately and prepare to be boarded, or face the consequences of your unprovoked aggression against humanity." Commander Vex felt the blood drain from his face as the tactical display updated, showing the true scope of the human armada. Now emerging from behind Jupiter, they'd only fought a human scout unit. "Civilian border patrol?" Commander Vex hissed, his crest flaring with agitation. "Intelligence assured us those were military vessels." Strategic Officer Lom consulted her database, mandibles clicking anxiously. "Our information indicates that humans don't maintain a clear separation between civilian and military operations in space. Their border patrol vessels are armed, but primarily perform search and rescue, meteoroid deflection, and monitoring duties." Vex paced the command deck, all 4 arms clasped behind his back. "And now we've mobilized their actual military. Brilliant." The tactical display continued tracking the emerging human fleet. What had begun as dozens of vessels had multiplied into hundreds, all moving with coordinated precision that belied everything the hegemony knew about Earth's supposed technological capabilities. "Sir, we're receiving updated intelligence from our deep cover operative on Mars," Communications Officer Trell announced. "According to this report, human military technology is significantly more advanced than our assessment suggested." "How significantly?" Vex demanded. Trell swallowed hard. Their public-facing technology is deliberately archaic compared to their military capabilities, Commander. They've maintained this deception for decades to avoid attracting attention from spacefaring civilizations like ours. A cold sensation crept down Vex's spine. The hegemony had dispatched his fleet based on intercepted civilian communications and observations of commercial spacecraft. If the humans had been concealing their true capabilities all along. Admiral Thorne is requesting a response, sir, Trell reminded him. Vex straightened his uniform. Open the channel. The human admiral's stern face reappeared. Commander, I require your immediate surrender. Your unprovoked attack has resulted in the deaths of 43 civilian patrol officers. Each moment you delay will be reflected in your subsequent trial under galactic common law. Vex blinked in confusion. Galactic common law? Earth is not a signatory to. Earth has maintained observer status in the Galactic Council for 63 years, Commander, Admiral Thorne interrupted. We chose not to announce our presence to expansionist powers such as the hegemony. Your attack has forced our hand. The command deck fell silent. Observer status? The implications were staggering. If Earth had representatives in the Council, they would have access to technologies and alliances far beyond what the hegemony had prepared to face. We were unaware of Earth's Council status, Vex offered cautiously. Perhaps we can negotiate. Negotiation. Window closing in 30 seconds, Commander, Thorne replied coldly. Your fleet will power down weapons and propulsion systems immediately, or we will consider it a continuation of hostilities. Lieutenant Mick approached Vex's command chair. Sir, our scanners detect energy buildups in the human vessels. Their weapons technology appears unconventional. Clarify, Vex demanded. They're not using standard plasma arrays or kinetic drivers. These readings suggest some form of gravitic manipulation we haven't encountered before. Vex weighed his options. His fleet of 40 vessels had been deemed overwhelming force against a primitive world. Now they faced hundreds of ships of unknown capability. Fighting would be suicidal. Surrender meant disgrace. Sir, Trell prompted. The humans are arming weapons. Power down all offensive systems, Vex ordered through clenched teeth. Inform Admiral Thorne we are complying. Wise decision, the human replied before Trell could transmit the message. Somehow, they'd intercepted Vex's orders to his crew. Prepare to receive boarding parties. They will secure your vessel and escort all personnel to detention facilities. The transmission ended, and Vex slumped in his command chair. Send a tight beam. Communication to the hegemony, he ordered quietly. Code Black Priority. Their intelligence on humanity was catastrophically wrong. We weren't fighting their navy. We only fought a human scout unit. The boarding of Commander Vex's flagship proceeded with unnerving efficiency. Human soldiers moved through the corridors with practiced precision, their armor unlike anything depicted in hegemony intelligence briefings. Instead of the bulky environmental suits expected of a species only recently adapted to space, they wore sleek, form-fitting combat systems that seemed to anticipate movement. Vex watched from the command deck as security feeds showed his crew being efficiently corralled. Not a single shot had been fired. The humans had deployed some sort of localized energy field that rendered hegemony weapons inert. Fascinating technology, murmured Science Officer Zool, standing beside him. Their suits appear to incorporate reactive materials that adapt to our atmospheric conditions in real time. The command deck doors slid open, admitting a human officer flanked by 4 soldiers. Unlike the admiral they'd seen on screen, this human wore armor identical to the boarding parties, with only subtle insignia marking rank. Commander Vex, the human stated rather than asked. I'm Major Reed, 2nd Tactical Response Division. You'll accompany us to the UEFS Intrepid for processing and interrogation. Vex straightened his posture, determined to maintain dignity. As the commanding officer of this vessel, I formally surrender myself and request appropriate treatment of my crew under interstellar protocols. Major Reed's expression remained neutral. Your crew will be treated according to Galactic Council detention guidelines. The Council representatives have already been notified of this incident. These representatives, Vex ventured cautiously. How long has humanity held Council observer status? Something resembling amusement flickered across Reed's face. That's not relevant to your current situation, Commander. However, I can tell you that humanity has been monitoring hegemony expansion patterns for longer than you might imagine. As they were escorted through the corridors of his own ship, Vex noticed something disturbing. The humans moved with a confidence that suggested intimate familiarity with hegemony vessel layouts. They never hesitated at junctions, never consulted schematics, never displayed the uncertainty expected when navigating an alien craft. "You've boarded our ships before," Vex realized aloud. Major Reed maintained his forward gaze. "We prefer preparation to improvisation when lives are at stake." They entered a shuttle bay where a human transport vessel waited, its design unlike any craft Vex had seen in his centuries of military service. The hull seemed to shimmer slightly, as though not entirely committed to physical space. "Science officer," Zul couldn't contain her scientific curiosity. "Your vessel's outer skin? Is that a phase variant metamaterial?" The Major glanced at her. "Classified technology, officer. Though I'm impressed you recognized it at all." As they boarded the human shuttle, Vex observed the interior controls. No physical interfaces. The human pilots appeared to operate the craft through subtle hand gestures and eye movements, suggesting neural interface technology far beyond hegemony capabilities. The shuttle departed, giving Vex his first external view of the human fleet. The tactical displays hadn't done justice to their actual presence. Ships of varying designs maintained perfect formation, some exhibiting characteristics that defied conventional spacefaring principles. Several appeared to manipulate local space-time, creating gravitational lenses that distorted light around them. "Your technology," Vex said quietly. "It's not consistent with your species' development timeline." Major Reed studied him for a moment. "Commander, humanity learned long ago that appearing less advanced than we actually are provides strategic advantages. The border patrol you encountered represented our public-facing technology, the facade we maintain for observers. You deliberately misled interstellar intelligence gatherers," Vex concluded. "We call it strategic technological obscurity," Reed replied. "While other species raced to display their advancement, humanity decided centuries ago to keep our true capabilities classified. The ships you're seeing now represent technology we've had for generations." The shuttle approached an enormous vessel that hadn't been visible in the initial engagement. As they drew closer, Vex realized with horror that it dwarfed even the hegemony's largest dreadnoughts. "The UEFS Intrepid," Major Reed announced. "Our oldest serving carrier. She's been patrolling the outer system for over 80 years. 80 years. The implications stunned Vex into silence. While the hegemony had been watching Earth's primitive space stations and chemical rockets, humanity had secretly deployed fleets of technologically superior vessels throughout their system. They hadn't just fought a scout unit, they'd fought a deliberately misleading facade. The interrogation chamber aboard the UEFS Intrepid hardly resembled one. Instead of the intimidating environment Vex expected, he found himself in what appeared to be a comfortable conference room, with actual wooden furniture, a shocking extravagance in space. Admiral Thorne entered, accompanied by a civilian wearing simple attire. The contrast between the Admiral's formal uniform and the civilian's plain clothes created an unexpected dynamic that Vex couldn't quite interpret. "Commander Vex," Admiral Thorne began, "this is Dr. Lane, our diplomatic liaison. She'll be overseeing our conversation." Vex noted how the Admiral subtly deferred to the unassuming human. "Interesting power structure. Before we begin formally," Dr. Lane said, her voice measured and calm, "I want to establish that this isn't merely an interrogation. It's an opportunity to correct profound misunderstandings that led to today's unfortunate events. You claim humanity has maintained observer status in the Galactic Council," Vex replied cautiously. "Yet the hegemony has held a council seat for centuries. We would have known of your presence." Dr. Lane and Admiral Thorne exchanged glances that spoke volumes. "The council you're familiar with," Dr. Lane explained, "is one of 7 regional governance bodies in this spiral arm alone. The hegemony's influence extends to only one of these councils, the one overseeing your expansion territory." Vex felt his world tilting. 7 councils? The actual galactic governance structure is considerably more complex than the hegemony. has been led to believe, Admiral Thorne added. Most spacefaring civilizations are gradually introduced to these layers as they demonstrate sufficient diplomatic maturity. The implication was clear. The hegemony hadn't demonstrated such maturity. Dr. Lane activated a holographic display showing a three-dimensional galactic map unlike any Vex had studied. Complex overlapping jurisdictions covered the spiral arms, with Earth positioned at a crucial juncture between three governance zones. Humanity's first extraterrestrial contact wasn't publicly disclosed, she continued. It occurred approximately 3 centuries ago. Since then, we've maintained what we call a technological reservation policy, developing our capabilities privately while presenting a more primitive face to potential adversaries. Vex struggled to process this information. But your planetary communications, your public space programs, carefully curated, Admiral Thorne stated flatly. What species like yours monitor are essentially historical reenactments maintained to prevent precisely the sort of premature confrontation your fleet initiated. Why maintain such an elaborate deception? Vex asked. Dr. Lane's expression softened slightly. Human history is marked by the dangers of technological disparity between civilizations. When societies with different technological capabilities meet, the less advanced often suffer catastrophically. We decided not to risk our species becoming either the conquered or the conquerors due to such disparities. A chime sounded, and Admiral Thorne checked a subtle display on his wrist. The Hegemony Central Command has responded to your Code Black transmission, he informed Vex. They're dispatching their 3rd Battle Fleet to, quote, rescue you and punish Earth for deception and aggression. Vex felt a cold dread. Admiral, the 3rd Fleet includes planet-killer weapons. I must urge you to evacuate your population centers immediately. To his surprise, both humans appeared completely unconcerned. Commander, Dr. Lane said gently, the Hegemony 3rd Fleet will never reach Earth. You don't understand their capabilities. We understand them perfectly, Admiral Thorne interrupted. In approximately 17 hours, they'll encounter the actual United Earth Defense Fleet at the heliopause boundary. What you've seen today represents less than 2% of our military capacity. Vex stared in disbelief. 2%? Dr. Lane nodded solemnly. The vessels you've encountered are our Jupiter Defense Squadron, essentially our local system, patrol. Our main fleet operates beyond your current scanning capabilities. And they've been tracking the hegemony expansion for decades, Admiral Thorne added. Your 3rd Fleet's approach vectors and capabilities are already thoroughly documented. The revelation struck Vex like a physical blow. The mighty hegemony, who had subjugated 17 star systems, had severely miscalculated its position in the galactic order. What happens now? He asked quietly. What happens now? Dr. Lane answered. Depends largely on how the hegemony responds to the situation. A display activated, showing a real-time transmission from deep space. Vex recognized the imposing silhouette of the Hegemony 3rd Fleet's command, Dreadnought, Inevitable Conquest. Before it stretched a formation of human vessels, unlike those Vex had seen thus far. Darker, more angular, with configurations that suggested they were purpose-built for warfare rather than modified from civilian designs. This transmission is currently taking place at the outer boundary of your solar system, Admiral Thorne explained. High Command decided to intercept your reinforcements before they could enter the system proper. On screen, a human officer was addressing High Admiral Zorn, the Hegemony's most decorated military commander. Require your immediate withdrawal from Sol-controlled space, the human was saying. This territorial violation follows an unprovoked attack on our civilian patrol units. High Admiral Zorn's distinctive triple-ridged features contorted with contempt. Earth has no recognized territorial claim beyond its immediate planetary system. The hegemony does not recognize your authority to demand our withdrawal. The human officer remained impassive. Your recognition is not required, High Admiral. This is notification, not negotiation. You have 30 minutes to reverse course. Vex watched the exchange with growing dread. He had served under Zorn early in his career and knew the High Admiral's infamous intransigence. Zorn had built his reputation on never retreating, regardless of circumstances. You're going to destroy them, Vex murmured. Dr. Lane's expression revealed genuine regret. We would vastly prefer to avoid further bloodshed, Commander. That's why we're showing you this, in hopes you might provide insight that could prevent escalation. Vex considered his options carefully. Loyalty to the hegemony had been the foundation of his centuries-long career. Yet he had also witnessed the casual disregard for other species that characterized hegemony expansion policy. If Dr. Lane was correct about humanity's true capabilities, the Third Fleet was advancing toward annihilation through ignorance. High Admiral Zorn respects only two things, Vex finally said. Superior force and superior knowledge. You've demonstrated the former. You need to demonstrate the latter. Admiral Thorne raised an eyebrow. You're suggesting we reveal intelligence? That would convince him of our advantage? Precisely. Zorn believes the hegemony's intelligence network is unparalleled. If you can prove you know things about the hegemony that should be impossible for you to know. Dr. Lane nodded thoughtfully and spoke into a communication device. Minutes later, the transmission showed the human officer speaking again. This time with different information. High Admiral Zorn, the officer stated calmly. To demonstrate our sincerity, we are transmitting the exact specifications of your flagship's quantum fold drive, including the design modification implemented after the Procyon campaign that your engineers have kept classified from all non-hegemony species. On screen, Zorn's expression shifted from contempt to shock. Additionally, the human continued, we're providing the access codes to your personal command protocols, specifically, the override sequences installed by the hegemony's central authority, without your knowledge. The silence that followed was profound. Vex knew that the existence of such override codes, allowing central authority to countermand fleet commanders' orders, was perhaps the most closely guarded secret in the hegemony. Military. How could they possibly know that? Vex whispered. Admiral Thorne's expression remained neutral. Humanity has maintained deep cover intelligence networks throughout this sector for generations, Commander. We know considerably more about the hegemony than just military specifications. On screen, High Admiral Zorn appeared to be consulting urgently with his advisors. Finally, he turned back to the transmission. We will withdraw to the designated coordinates, Zorn stated with barely contained fury. This matter will be addressed through diplomatic channels. As the transmission ended, Vex felt a complex mixture of emotions, relief that wholesale destruction had been avoided, but also a profound disquiet about humanity's true place in galactic affairs. You've been watching us all along, he said, quietly. We've been watching everyone, Dr. Lane corrected gently. It's how we've survived. The following day brought a shift in Vex's status from prisoner to something closer to a diplomatic representative. He was relocated to comfortable quarters aboard the Intrepid and granted limited access to certain areas of the vessel, always under the watchful eye of a human escort named Lieutenant Pax, a quiet, observant soldier who answered Vex's questions with surprising candor. I don't understand, Vex admitted, as they walked through a hydroponic section where crew members cultivated actual Earth plants in space. If humanity possesses such advanced technology and intelligence networks, why maintain the charade? Why not simply take your place openly among the advanced civilizations? Lieutenant Pax considered the question carefully. It's not about hiding our capabilities forever. It's about revealing them on our terms, when we're confident in our ability to manage the consequences. And what consequences concern humans so deeply? History, Pax replied simply. Specifically, human history. Every time cultures with significant technological disparities have encountered each other on Earth, the results have been catastrophic for the less advanced group. They paused at a viewport offering a spectacular view of Jupiter and the human fleet, maintaining formation around the hegemony vessels. The gas giants' swirling storms provided a dramatic backdrop to the tense standoff. When Europeans with relatively advanced technology encountered indigenous civilizations in the Americas, Australia, and elsewhere, the result was genocide, colonization, and cultural destruction, Pax continued. When humans achieved spaceflight, we unanimously decided not to risk becoming either party in such a scenario. So you developed in secret, Vex concluded. Not exactly secret. Selective disclosure. We shared our existence with civilizations. We deemed ethically compatible while concealing our true capabilities from expansionist powers like the hegemony. Vex bristled slightly. The hegemony brings order to primitive worlds. Pax's expression remained neutral. The hegemony brings subjugation disguised as order, Commander. We've documented your integration processes on 17 worlds. We've collected testimony from species who lost their autonomy, their resources, and in some cases, their cultural identities. They continued walking, passing a section where human engineers appeared to be studying confiscated hegemony equipment with dismissive ease, as if examining ancient artifacts rather than supposedly advanced technology. What truly sets humans apart, Pax said after a thoughtful silence, isn't our technology. It's our determined refusal to repeat our worst historical patterns. We deliberately chose a different path than conquest. Yet you possess overwhelming military force, Vex observed. We do. But notice what we haven't done with it. We haven't conquered. We haven't expanded beyond our system except through diplomatic channels. We haven't exploited other species. Their tour brought them to a secure briefing room where Admiral Thorne and Dr. Lane waited. A holographic display showed the Hegemony Third Fleet in retreat, escorted by human vessels. Commander Vex, Admiral Thorne acknowledged. We've received a communication from your central authority requesting your return as part of a diplomatic exchange. They're sending an envoy to discuss what they're calling the Earth situation. They'll want to assess your true capabilities, Vex warned. We're counting on it, Dr. Lane replied with a slight smile. This incident provides an opportunity to recalibrate the hegemony's understanding of galactic realities. Vex studied the humans carefully. Throughout his captivity, he'd observed contradictions that challenged everything the hegemony believed about developing species. These humans possessed overwhelming military and technological superiority, yet showed remarkable restraint. They had every advantage yet sought diplomatic solutions rather than conquest. I still don't understand, Vex admitted. With your capabilities, you could have established dominance throughout this sector. Why choose obscurity instead? Admiral Thorne and Dr. Lane exchanged one of their meaningful glances before the Admiral responded. Because we understand something the hegemony has yet to learn, Commander. True power doesn't come from controlling others. It comes from controlling yourself. Humanity's greatest achievement isn't our technology. It's our hard-won wisdom about when not to use it. The simplicity and conviction behind the statement struck Vex deeply. In that moment, he began to comprehend the fundamental difference between human philosophy and hegemony doctrine. Your report to Central Authority will significantly influence how this situation develops, Dr. Lane noted. What will you tell them, Commander? The hegemony diplomatic vessel. Solemn discourse hovered at the designated coordinates near Earth's moon, its ornate design reflecting the hegemony's preference for intimidating aesthetics. Across from it, the human diplomatic ship Concordia maintained position, smaller, sleeker, and deliberately understated in comparison. Commander Vex stood at the viewport of the shuttle transporting him back to hegemony custody, watching the two vessels that represented such different approaches to power. After days among humans, returning to hegemony control felt strangely constraining. Second thoughts, Commander? Dr. Lane asked quietly from beside him. Not about returning, Vex replied. About what I'll report. The shuttle docked with solemn discourse, where senior emissary Krall waited with a contingent of hegemony guards. The formalities of the exchange were brief and tense, with Krall barely acknowledging the human representatives. Once securely aboard the hegemony vessel, emissary Krall led Vex to a secure debriefing chamber. Central Authority awaits your full report, Commander, Krall stated without preamble. What are we truly facing with these humans? Vex considered his words carefully. Everything. The future relationship between humanity and the hegemony, potentially. Thousands of lives, hinged on how he characterized what he had witnessed. Emissary. I must report that the hegemony has catastrophically underestimated humanity in every respect, Vex began. Their technological capabilities exceed our most advanced systems by at least 3 generations. Their intelligence network has comprehensively penetrated our military and governance structures. Most importantly, they represent a paradigm we haven't encountered before. Explain, Krall demanded, eyes narrowing. The humans possess overwhelming force but exercise overwhelming restraint. They could have annihilated both my fleet and High Admiral Zorn's reinforcements. Instead, they sought minimal casualties and diplomatic resolution. Krall snorted dismissively. Weakness disguised as mercy. No, emissary. Strength expressed through restraint. Vex straightened, aware that his next words might end his career, or worse. I believe the hegemony must fundamentally reassess its approach to Earth and humanity. You suggest capitulation? Kral's voice dripped with contempt. I suggest adaptation to reality, emissary. The humans don't want our territory. They don't seek our subjugation. They want recognition of their sovereignty and adherence to interstellar ethical standards they believe we've violated. Kral studied him for a long moment. You sound impressed by these primitives, Commander. I am not impressed by primitives, emissary, Vex replied with quiet firmness. I am impressed by a civilization that developed in secret while we dismissed them as insignificant, that built fleets we never detected, and that could have destroyed us but chose dialogue instead. The emissary's expression hardened. Central authority will find your perspective concerning. Central authority should find the facts concerning, Vex countered. We attacked what we believed was a primitive species and discovered instead a technologically superior civilization that has been monitoring our expansion for generations. The humans know every violation of galactic common law we've committed in our conquest of 17 systems. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Kral's features. What exactly are you suggesting, Commander? I'm suggesting that the hegemony faces a choice. We can pursue conflict with a species that has demonstrated both superior capabilities and superior restraint, or we can recognize an opportunity to evolve our own approach to galactic citizenship. Hours later, as negotiations between the hegemony and humanity commenced aboard the neutral station positioned between their vessels, Vex observed from a secondary chamber. On screens, he watched Emissary Kral reluctantly engaging with Dr. Lane and a human diplomatic team. Lieutenant Pax entered the observation room, nodding respectfully to Vex. Your emissary seems resistant to our proposals. He was chosen for his unwavering loyalty to hegemony doctrine, Vex acknowledged. But even he can't deny the strategic realities I outlined in my report. And those are? That the hegemony encountered, not merely another spacefaring species, but a civilization that represents what we could become if we chose a different path. Vex turned from the screens to face the human directly. Your Admiral Thorne said something that continues to resonate with me. True power comes from controlling yourself, not others. Pax smiled slightly. An old human concept, actually. We spent millennia learning it the hard way. On the screens, the negotiations continued, tense but progressing. The first steps toward a fundamental recalibration of the relationship between humanity and the hegemony. In the end, Vex mused, the most shocking discovery wasn't your technology or your military capabilities. It was discovering that the most advanced thing about humans is your perspective. How so? You had every advantage and chose restraint. You had every reason for vengeance and chose minimal force. You had the power to conquer and chose coexistence. Vex shook his head in lingering disbelief. The hegemony encountered what we thought was a primitive species, only to discover we were the primitives all along. Pax considered this thoughtfully. Perhaps that's humanity's unique contribution to galactic society, not our technology or our strength, but the wisdom we've painfully earned about how to use them. As the diplomatic discussions continued on screen, Vex understood the true meaning behind the human saying he'd heard during his captivity. The most dangerous human unit isn't their military. It's their capacity to imagine and create a different future than the past. They had indeed only fought a human scout unit, but they had encountered the full force of humanity's evolved perspective, and that had proven more powerful than any weapon. The end.